Greetings, mind crafters, and welcome to another Minecraft episode on this fabulous day. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am your hostess with the most. Let me say it, try that over again. Hostess with the mostest to just have a chat with you about another, way to become the boss of your brain. And today's Mindcraft topic is looking to find the fascinating. And so, my inspiration for today is a Mr. George McCowan. He is the author of Essentialism, also other books. Essentialism: The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And I think I mentioned I joined a mastermind club a few months ago, which has been the gift that keeps on giving. I have to tell you that. And the masterminds in there are huge fans of Greg McGowan's work and his other book. Well, he maybe has more than two, but Essentialism, and that feeds into Effortless, which we'll definitely be having some talks on too. But I want to take it a step further than the last episode. I guess first starting off, just to recap very quickly what essentialism is. So essentialism is really honing in on that one thing, regardless of the context, like that one thing at work that needs to be done, or that one thing that makes your heart sing. Maybe you're doing all these other jobs that don't, or you're spinning your wheels, and that kind of thing, and hone in on what's really important. And the essentialists are big on turning down stuff, even if it's good, if it's not great, because having a bunch of, 12 or, eight, 3, 4, 5, 12 really good projects going is not as good as having one great project going. And Greg has lots of statistical support to, stories, really cool stories about, airline companies and things like that you ended up being stellar because they trimmed the fat. So really it's about trimming the fat. And he does say something in there, uh, I don't know, earlier in the book, that the word priority back in, I think it was the 1400s, was singular. There wasn't any option for it to be priorities, like get your priorities together. And then companies started with the Pry 1, Pry 2, Pry 3. That's ridiculous because it's just like saying I have three favorites. Well, you can't have three favorites. You can have one favorite and two things that you like next to the favorite, but the very word means there's only one. So it's the same thing with priority. And Greg has all kinds of contexts for this. So today, he's not talking about businesses earlier and things like that, but how we can become essentialists in our lives, also by sort of filtering out the noise. And our former dean, how much I love teaching at Champlain. Our former dean used to help me with this constantly. And this is way before I stumbled upon Greg's book, but I'd come in and it wasn't even necessarily negative. Sometimes it might have been a something going on with politics or who knows. But she would just say, okay, breathe. She was so good at that. And just, okay, there's a lot of noise going on in this story. Let's filter through what the main theme is. And my dean did that way back. My former dean did that way back when. Come to find out, this is, Greg's main theme. So today we are going to talk about looking to see what really matters. And so Greg talks about, actually there's a he has a actually has a quote by T.S. Eliot which I really like. I used in a different circumstance, and it says, where is the knowledge we have lost in information? Man, that is so true, especially with our media saturated world right now. Anyway, so Greg starts out. He says the late writer Nora Ephron is arguably best known for movies like Silkwood, Sleepless in Seattle, and When Harry Met Sally. Oh, I love When Harry Met Sally, each of which was nominated for an Academy Award. Ephron's success as a writer and screenwriter has a lot to do with her ability to capture the essence of a story, a skill she honed in her earlier career as a journalist. But for all her years in the high octane world of journalism, the lesson that affected her most profoundly dates all the way back to her high school years. Gosh, I love this. So, whether we're talking about a conversation, because I've been, starting to really practices. What's the main theme? And to find the essence or the main theme of a conversation. And I'm actually having a stray brain cell right now that dates back to the early 90s, excuse me, when this is a snuggly day here, when I was therapizing and I had the most fantastic clinical supervisor ever. So, those of you who are not in the therapy world, clinical supervisor is not your boss. The clinical supervisor is this wonderful sounding board for when you have like a really challenging case. So Rick would zip in, I think once a month, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was every other week, actually, come to think of it. Anyway, it wasn't frequent. It was every other week or once a month because it's your really tough cases. The rest you kind of bounced off in confidence with colleagues and things like that. Um, but he taught me therapeutically, even that the content is very little of it. You really want to pay attention to the dynamics of the room. Who's trying to control therapy? Who's trying to, and kind of gave me a bunch of examples. The content is such a small part of therapy. And then once you become seasoned, obviously you're listening to the content, but it's not really the representation of what's going on behind the scenes. And so basically that this is what Greg is saying is there's a lot of noise, and the dates can pull us away from what's really going on in the room, right? And sort of the direction that the whole conversation or situation is actually going. And Greg uses a lot of journalism stories. I think because I'm pretty sure it says he majored in journalism in college. But anyway, it makes terrific sense with what we're talking about. So he says in every set of facts, something essential is hidden, just like my supervisor Rick was saying. All the tap dancing around the issue is pointing to the issue. We just have to look at that and not get caught up in the tap dancing. He says, and a good journalist knows that finding it involves exploring those pieces of information and figuring out the relationships between them. And my undergraduate degree, oh, he there he says it was in journalism, so he takes this seriously. He said it means making those relationships and connections explicit. It means constructing the whole from the sum of its parts and understanding how these different pieces come together to matter to anyone. The best journalists do not simply relay information. Their value is in discovering what really matters to people. So this is what we're talking about with Greg's journalism example is in our everyday conversations. Basically, we're talking about sifting through the bullshit and finding out what the person really means. And I know in the therapy world, that's a lot of nonverbal stuff. That's a lot of paying attention, to the where the eye contact goes, paying attention to the folded arms, paying attention to all this stuff. Also, and then listening to the tone, listening to where the direction of the whole thing is going. So then Greg says, have you ever felt lost and unsure about what to focus on? Have you ever felt overwhelmed by all the information? Oh my God, this day and age, bombarding you and not sure what to make of it. Have you ever felt dizzy from the different requests coming at you and unable to figure out which are important and which are not? Have you ever missed the point to something in your work or at home and not realized your mistake until it was too late? Oh my gosh, of course. If so, um, he said this next essentialist skill will be immensely valuable. And he's talking about the big picture here. And so he goes through a bunch of goes through some examples here, but I'm going to buzz right down to the whole journalist thread because that's, I think, the main theme. So he says, being a journalist of your own life. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Being a journalist of your own life will force you to stop hyper focusing on all the minor details and see the bigger picture. Just like my former dean used to say, sift through the noise. He said, you can apply the skills of a journalist no matter what field you are in. You can even apply them to your personal life by training yourself to look for the lead. That's in quotes. Look for the lead. You will suddenly find yourself able to see what you have missed. You'll be able to do more than simply see the dots of each day. Gosh, that's true. We can get so caught up in just connecting the dots instead of getting the actual invisible thread. That's what really matters. He said you also connect them to see the trends. Instead of just reacting to the facts, you'll be able to focus on the larger issues that really matter. And then Greg goes into another journalist example with a Thomas Friedman, a New York Times columnist. We're going to leave that alone and then bounce right down to the best journalist as Thomas Friedman. He says, shared later with me, listen for what others do not hear. They listen for what others do not hear. At the lunch that he spoke of before this, he had been listening for what was being said only at the periphery. He was listening for more, for what was not being said. Same thing like me with the therapy example. And I can't tell you how many times I just learned from this. I once had I was seeing a family, and there was some really unfavorable behavior going on in the family, some definite codependency, and I'd seen the kids, and then the mom came into that point, and I was just trying. There were definitely missing pieces, and the two little boys were so sweet, that there were missing pieces, and then when enter the dad into therapy session, eventually it just all came together because he was cracking jokes and trying to, and there was so much noise going on with this guy. And what I figured out very, very quickly when his energy came into the room is he was trying to control the therapy. He was dominating, and I watched the wife shrink into her chair pretty much. The two little boys were very chatty, stopped talking, just kind of smiled, and he was so much. It was so much was revealed about this family dynamic when he came on the scene, um, that it was just very, very, very overtly obvious. If you filter through all the noise and all his jokes and trying to be dominant with me as well in a verbally in these sort of manipulating conversational tactics that he had. And wow, and it making sense after that. And so essentialist, I'm a novice essentialist, but I'm a work in progress. He says essentialists are powerful observers and listeners, knowing that the reality of trade-offs means they can't possibly pay attention to everything. Okay, we just can't possibly pay attention to everything. We're shifting back and forth, and we're going to lose some stuff. So he said they listen deliberately for what is not being explicitly stated. They read between the lines. And then he says, "Oh, I'm such a Harry Potter fan." He says this, or as Hermione Granger of Harry Potter fame, and he says, an unlikely essentialist, I'll grant you, but an essentialist in regard all the same, puts it, she says, quote, I am actually, I'm highly logical, which allows me to look past extraneous detail and perceive clearly that which others overlooked, end quotes. That's wonderful. And he says, non-essentialists listen too, but they listen while preparing to say something. Oh my gosh. I can just picture so many conversations where I was acutely aware of this. Non-essentialists also listens what he's saying, but they're listening but they're ready for what they're going to say next. They get distracted by extraneous noise. They hyper-focus on inconsequential details. They hear the loudest voice. I love this. They hear the loudest voice, but they get the wrong message. Let's say that again. This is about non-essentialists. They hear the loudest voice, but they get the wrong message. In their eagerness to react, they miss the point. As a result, they may, using a metaphor from C.S. Lewis, run around with fire extinguishers in times of flood. They miss the lead. And then looks like you have some tips coming up, but gosh, Greg, he's so spot on about the craziness and or the mashugana, the chaos, the media saturation, the whole thing with the busy dashness that we have just become addicted to in our society. It takes even more effort, I think, to practice essentialism. And so Greg says, in the chaos of the modern workplace, with so many loud voices all around us, pulling us in many directions, it is more important now than ever that we learn to resist the siren song of distraction and keep our eyes and ears peeled for the headlines. And then he gives a few sort of tips and tricks to tap into your inner journalist. So the first rather obvious one would be to keep a journal, right? I think the very definition of a journalist is somebody who writes in a journal, at least partially anyway. And so what brings to mind, or what actually comes to my mind right now with hearing this tip of, or reading this tip of Greg's, is Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. Even though that's specifically about art, the writing the morning pages, as she calls them, it would really help with anything. It's tapping into exactly what Greg's talking about. So Julia Cameron's whole thing is about writer's block, and if you're trying to paint or write a book or write a script or whatever, and but you're all clogged up, you can feel the creativity, but you can't get it out on paper. There's like a big roadblock there. Well, she talks about using the morning pages, meaning not getting up and having tea and waiting for a couple hours to do it, but sort of immediately get your tea for sure, but sort of immediately regurgitating what's in your head without any worries about concerns about grammar or paragraphing or any complete sentences, just basically throwing it up on the paper, because out will come, lots of what was sort of lodged in your limbic system when you were sleeping the night before, and it really gets rid of it, and it unhinges the creativity that's been held back by all that clutter, mind clutter. And so, um, Greg is talking about something similar. It's not necessarily related directly to your inner artist, but in a way, it really kind of is. And then he talks about getting out into the field. And actually, the creativity thing really actually fits here, because let's say getting out into the field, because problem solving is part of creativity. It's just a way to manifest, a way to express creativity, use creativity, whatever. So let's say you're trying to come up with a new product, right, or service. You want to, you're coming up with something wonderfully creative and innovative, right? To get out there in the field, in order to watch, what other people are doing and listen to it, sifting through the noise, which helps to clarify, you know, um, what the need is, to then clarify the problem, solve the ideating, creating and innovating by gaining clarity. So getting out in the field, watching, observing. I guess that's almost the same thing. Observing is definitely deeper, more of a Sherlock Holmes word. Observing and then problem solving in order to innovate. And then the third tip is also kind of right along with Sherlock Holmes, because Greg's talking about keeping your eyes peeled for the abnormal and just unusual details, right? So really taking taking it all in and noticing, um again, it's kind of like the not being said part. Looking for the gaps, looking for the white space in between what people are saying and doing is what we're talking about. And then lastly, he talks about clarifying the question, and he brings up, which is so true, I think most of us can relate to this, that um which is about this is about clarifying the question. How many times have politicians, been asked a question by constituents, right? The public at large, and they answer everything in the world but the question, because they're just tiptoeing, tap dancing around it. It's about the environment, something touchy, immigration, whatever, something. And the touchier, I would say, the more they tap dance around it, obviously, right? And so clarifying the question for us, we're trying to find the main lead in our own story, bringing it back right into the living, right? This is our own story. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's a series of conversations. Maybe it's more of a series of internal conversations about where your life is going, and looking for the lead. What is my next move? What are all the green lights and red lights pointing to? What am I being How am I being redirected? How am I being pulled? Where am I being pulled? And what am I finding resistance with? Where are the red lights? Clearly I'm not meant to go that way. I'm meant to go this way. So finding sort of the main lead and how the green lights are speaking to us. Okay, so this is what we're talking about right here. Again, Greg McCowan was my inspiration today, author of the book Essentialism. So this took essentialism and brought it into the personal, right? Looking for the main lead in our own lives, looking to find the fascinating, which means to sift through the noise, the BS, and focus on on hearing what's not being said, I guess, as they say, or as he says. So that's it. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful, still snowing in April, northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.